very good afternoon and Jai Jagat to all of you present out here this beautiful Saturday afternoon. You know, this is the 16th International Conference of the Chief Justices, and we are going to start with the very first parallel session. The theme of the session which we are going to deliberate upon today in this venue will be tackling global issues. Before I tell you something about these issues which we need to tackle, I would like to introduce the various person here on the dais. The person who is going to chair this session is His Excellency Sir Lacoba T. Itali, Governor General of Tuvalu. Welcome, sir. Can we applaud for him? The other people are Honorable Miss Justice Da Selena Graciela More Raifria, Judge Supreme Court of Solana, Peru. Can we applaud for her? Honorable Miss Justice Dr. Rosa Amaya Saldariaga, Judge Supreme Court, Lima, Peru again. Honorable Mr. Justice Muhammad Abdallah Melsid, Judge Court of Appeals and Director of Chief Justice Office, Sudan. Honorable Mr. Justice Amare Amogne Ajaji, Judge Supreme Court, Ethiopia. And Honorable Justice Dr. Francisco Buffa, Judge Supreme Court of Cassation, Italy. A little about the global issues which we need to deliberate upon. I'm sure you all are aware of quite a few of them. But today we are going to hear from these people what they have to say on these issues. If we talk about the global issues, the very first thing which comes to our mind is terrorism. I'm sure you would all agree upon that. Now, when we talk about terrorism, there are various kinds of terrorism. One is international terrorism. You all remember the attack on US in the year 2001 on the 11th of September. Everybody remembers that. Another can be a religious terrorism, wherein like you have the community riots, the fights between Hindu, Muslim, the fights between Shia and Sunnis. This is religious terrorism. And then we have the state-sponsored terrorism. At times it happens, maybe the state funds a group of people to do something wrong. That is state-funded or state-sponsored terrorism. This is one issue which we need to deliberate upon. The second issue is that of ethnic and civil wars, which is genocide by misguided forces. The third is nuclear proliferation and disarmament. This is something which we talk a lot about in CMS. And finally, when we say nuclear proliferation and disarmament, it means the total elimination of weapons. And the fourth is conflict resolution. That is, find out peaceful means, amicable means to find a solution to a problem. So let's see what these eminent people have to tell us about this. We will start with the chairperson, who is none other than His Excellency Sir Lacoba T. Itali, GCMC, Governor General of Tuvalu. Each person will get 10 minutes to speak, and after that we will have an interactive session with the children wherein you will get a chance to put forth your questions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam. fellow students, distinguished speakers of this panel session. Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon.
Terrorism, as we all know, is a threat. And these are the challenges that we are facing at the moment. Theoretically, I know terrorism in the sense that and its meaning. But we never know terrorism in Tuvalu because it's so small. And I think terrorism is a bit more to involve very advanced and bigger countries. What we know in Tuvalu is climate change and sea level rise. And that is a sort of natural disasters that we are facing at the moment. Human civilizations today, more than ever before, is threatened by disasters and tragedies of various kinds. Some natural, others man-made. Societies have never been so fragmented, so racked up by deep divisions rooted in ethnicity, religion, and economic disparities. Even the very survival of our planet is increasingly threatened by the possibility of ecological disaster. The world scenario is extremely perturbing, with the upsurge in violence, extremism, fundamentalism, and terrorism. The human aspirations for democracy and fundamental freedoms have in some parts of the world blended into new waves of ancient nationalism. The cohesion, unity, and integrity of existing nation states is imperiled, and it has brought in its wake an excess of actual and potential conflicts, situations across the globe. The problems of proliferation of nuclear and conventional weapons have also assumed new dimensions. In addition to this, the continuing problem of global poverty, economic recession, crushing debt burdens, and barriers of free integration trade increase the catalogue of the major threats to the peace and harmony of our planet. The last century has been most blood-stained in history, devouring nearly 100 million people. The present century has so far shown no sign of restraint. Clearly, international regimes are not being successful in limiting weapons of mass destruction and the buildup of conventional weapons. The proliferation of nuclear weapons in all its aspects must be prevented. But disarmament alone, critical though it may be, is not the universal remedy for a stable world order. For international security, we need an ethic of non-violence at the heart of all efforts to ensure peace and harmony in the world. The building of durable peace and the advancement of human civilization must encompass more than military threats and conventional security issues. It requires the adherence of nation states to certain universality, accepted norms and principles of conduct, and their commitment to a moral ethos. And therefore, the response that we have seen and the appeal by C.T. Montessori School is, I think, is the need of the hour to establish and reinvent the regimes of the United Nations worldwide, so that we can address global issues which are compelling us at the moment. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you so much for that very beautiful insight. And if I have followed it correctly, he did say terrorism is a threat to humanity. There are so many other things which we need to ponder upon. That is climate change. And this is affecting everybody the world over. Economic recession in so many countries. The poverty which we need to deal with urgently. Proliferation of nuclear weapons, he said, is not the only remedy, and for that we need conflict resolution. So now over to our next speaker. It is Honorable Miss Justice Dracelina Graciela More Rayofrau, Judge Supreme Court of Solana, Peru. Over to you, ma'am.
Buenas tardes con todos los alumnos, estimados colegas discentes y con el público en general. Antes que nada, quiero agradecer a City Montessori School por habernos invitado a participar en esta 16ª conferencia de jueces en el mundo. Es por ello que vamos hoy día a disertar sobre el terrorismo en el Perú.
Good afternoon to all the students and the distinguished speakers. Good afternoon to all the students and distinguished speakers. Before all, I'd like to thank for the opportunity of being here at the 16th International Conference of Chief Justice of the World. Terrorism is an issue that impacts all the world. That's why today I'm going to talk about Peruvian terrorism.
En las últimas décadas, el mundo ha sido víctima de uno de los peores flagelos, el terrorismo, el cual no es otra cosa que un hecho expresivo de violencia, el mismo que se ha presentado durante las diferentes etapas de la humanidad, tanto en las conquistas como en las guerras. Es por ello que el terrorismo tiene presencia tanto en el ámbito interno como en el mundial, siendo una vía abierta a todo acto violento, degradante e intimidatorio, el cual es aplicado sin reserva moral alguna, desconociendo los derechos humanos de los que goza todo ser humano por el simple hecho de serlo.
In recent decades, the world has suffered one of the worst scourges, terrorism, which is nothing but an expressive act of violence. It has been presented during the various stages of humanity, both conquest and wars, and is why terrorism has presence both domestically and globally. One way to open to all violent, degrading and intimidating act which is applied without moral reservation, ignoring human rights.
Podemos afirmar que el terrorismo consiste en la violencia o la amenaza de la violencia utilizada por un individuo o grupo de personas como estrategia política. Al igual que la revolución, el terrorismo es una acción política que rompe las reglas establecidas en un sistema político.
We can say that terrorism involves violence or the threat of violence used by a person or group of people as a political strategy. Like a revolution, terrorism is a political action that breaks the rules in a political system.
Los terroristas intentan utilizar la violencia como una táctica política legítima, pese a que todas las sociedades del mundo condenan este tipo de actos. Los terroristas evitan los canales tradicionales de negociación política. El terror es una estrategia de una organización débil para acatar un objetivo poderoso.
Terrorists try to use violence as a legitimate political tactic, although all societies of the world condemn such acts. Terrorists avoid traditional channels of political negotiation. Terror is a strategy of the weak organizations to attack a powerful goal.
Creemos necesario precisar que no solo los llamados terroristas hacen uso del terrorismo para el logro de sus objetivos, sino que también los gobiernos pueden cometer actos terroristas, denominándose así terrorismo de Estado, que no es otra cosa que el uso de la violencia ilegítima por parte de un gobierno contra individuos o grupos de la población. Contrario a los principios democráticos, el terrorismo de Estado se utiliza sobre todo en regímenes autoritarios o totalitarios, o también llamados de facto, que sobreviven por cuanto instalan el miedo o la intimidación entre su población como una forma de gobierno.
We should be noted that not only the so-called terrorists make use of terrorism to achieve its objectives, but also governments can commit terrorist acts, being called state terrorism, which is nothing but the use of illegitimate violence by a government against individuals or group of the population. Contrary to democratic political principles, state terrorism is primarily used in authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, also called de facto, which survives by instilling fear and intimidation among the population as a form of government.
Los fines buscados por los actos terroristas pueden ser políticos, religiosos, culturales o la toma del poder por un medio no convencional contrario al ordenamiento legal de cada país o estado. Es por ello que constantemente, al ver los noticieros, tanto nacionales como internacionales, diariamente encontramos noticias relativas a atentados producidos en la vía pública, donde pierde la vida gente inocente. Este fenómeno es una de las formas de violencia más difíciles de contener debido a que su campo de acción se extiende más allá de las regiones en conflicto. Es un fenómeno que se caracteriza por su violencia indiscriminada, involucrando a víctimas que no tienen nada que ver con el conflicto causante del caso terrorista, entre los que podemos mencionar mujeres y niños, quienes en muchos casos son utilizados como el blanco para atraer la atención y ejercer coerción con el objetivo de lograr un fin determinado. Es por ello que los diversos estados del mundo no debemos acceder a los requerimientos terroristas, sino que por el contrario, su rechazo debe plasmarse en normas jurídicas que contemplen su prevención y sanción. Caso contrario, estaríamos aceptando la legalidad de dichos actos terroristas, como sucedió en Colombia, cuando el gobierno colombiano negoció con las FARC, Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, lo que generó que, lejos de disminuir la violencia en dicho país, esta tomó mayor fuerza.
The end sought by terrorist acts may be political, religious, cultural, or take over by a non-conventional means contrary to the legal system of each country or state. It is why we constantly see in the national and international news daily are produced news about attacks on public roads where innocent people lose their lives. This phenomenon is one of the most difficult forms of violence to contain because its scope extends beyond the conflict regions. It is a phenomenon characterized by indiscriminate violence, involving victims who have nothing to do with the terrorist act causing conflict, among which we mention women and children, who, in many cases, are used as the target to attract attention and coercion in order to achieve a particular purpose. Which is why the various states of the world must not accept the terrorist requirements, but instead its refusal must be translated into legal provisions covering prevention and punishment. Otherwise, we would be accepting the legality of such terrorist acts as occurring in Colombia, where the Colombian government negotiated with the FARC, Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, which meant that far from reducing violence in the country, it took more strength.
En este orden de ideas, es preciso indicar que el Perú no es ajeno a este flagelo mundial llamado terrorismo, el cual tuvo sus inicios en los años 80, habiéndose presentado dos organizaciones terroristas, Sendero Luminoso y el MRTA, Movimiento Revolucionario Tupac Amaru. La estrategia de terror de estos dos grupos terroristas impartieron en el Perú por medio de la violencia a lo largo de 14 largos años estuvo sujeta a actos que causaron terror, desolación y muerte. Para quienes vivimos dichos años de terror, principalmente en la ciudad de Lima, capital del Perú, o en las diversas ciudades del centro y sierra del país, Les era difícil olvidar que la vida de los ciudadanos no tenía ningún valor. La muerte acechaba en el interior de nuestras casas, centros de estudios, centros laborales, en la calle o en el campo. No será difícil olvidar atentados como los de Tarata en Miraflores o del Consulado de Estados Unidos en el centro de Lima, así como los diversos atentados que sacudían casi a diario o que sucedían casi a diario, en los cuales murió mucha gente inocente y que causaron el terror en la población, lo que generó que se viviera un clima de inseguridad en el cual nadie se encontraba seguro en ningún lugar. Ello por cuanto no solo éramos víctimas de actos de grupos terroristas, sino también del llamado terrorismo estatal, como se ha corroborado actualmente con el accionar del llamado Grupo Colina, a quien se le atribuye crímenes como los de Barrios Altos y La Cantuta.
In this vein, it should be noted that Peru is no stranger to this global scourge called terrorism, which had its beginning in the 80s, having presented two terrorist organizations, Shining Path and the MRTA, Revolutionary Movement Tupac Amaru. The strategy of terror that these two terrorist groups in Peru imparted through violence throughout 14 long years was subject to acts causing terror, desolation and death. For those who lived these years of terror mainly in the city of Lima, capital of Peru, or in the various cities of the center and highlands of the country, it will be difficult to forget that the lives of the citizens had no value. Death lurked in the inside our houses, study centers, workplaces, on the street, or in the field. It will be hard to forget attacks like those of Tarata in Miraflores or the U.S. consulate in downtown Lima, and the various attacks that were happening almost daily, in which many innocent people died and caused terror in the population, which generated a climate of insecurity in which no one was safe anywhere. Because it not only we were victims of acts of terrorist groups, but also the so-called state terrorism, as it has been now confirmed with the action of the Colina group, who is credited as the crimes of Barrios Altos and La Cantuta.
Durante los 14 años de terror que soportó el Perú, Sendero Luminoso y el MRTA fueron causantes de la muerte de 26.829 personas inocentes, de pérdidas económicas que superaron los 26 millones de dólares, en una arbitraria e ilusoria carrera de tomar el poder por la violencia, valiéndose de todos los medios a su alcance y de todas las formas de lucha que iban en contra de las leyes peruanas y mundiales.
During the 14 years of terror which Peru endured, Shining Path and the MRTA caused 26,829 deaths of innocent people, economic losses exceeding $26 million in an arbitrary and illusory race to seize powers by violence, using all means at its disposal and all forms of struggle that went against the Peruvian and global laws.
Si bien históricamente se considera que la guerra civil peruana producida por el terrorismo duró 14 años, esto es, desde 1980 hasta aproximadamente 1900.
Honorable speakers, if you could just stick to time, because we just have 1 hour with us, wherein the children also need to ask you questions, and we want you all to answer to these questions. So if you could just stick to the time, and I would request the chairperson to please see that everybody speaks only for 10 minutes. If there are any translators, then maybe the speech can be given to the translator instead of having it in both the languages. Is this possible, sir? Can we have it like that? If we have translators, only the translator can speak. Can that be possible?
Yes, I think that.
I think that will work
because we are against time.
Yeah, we are running short of time.
Yes, and we really want the students to have time for questions. Yes, please, honorable justices.
The next
Speakers, please.
Mr. Justice Ernest Mujambo, Judge and Procurer General, Supreme Court, Cameroon. Yes, sir. Can he? All right. Please come.
Bien, el tema que yo voy a...
Her text is very large and she is
Madam, are you ready, madam, or otherwise we can go to the next person?
¿Puedo comenzar?
sí.
Ok, bien. El tema que me toca hoy día exponerles de manera sucinta es la trata de niños, niñas y adolescentes en el Perú, sobre la trata de personas. El origen y conceptualización: el ser humano ha comprendido que la lucha contra toda forma de esclavitud es tarea de todos.
Hello everyone. I'm going to talk about trafficking in children and adolescents in Peru. The origin and conceptualization of human trafficking. Human beings have understood that the fight against all forms of slavery is one, while destructive practices constitute the human condition.
En tanto constituyen prácticas destructivas de la condición humana. Sin embargo, pese a los esfuerzos efectuados, muchas personas, en su mayoría adolescentes, niños y niñas, son aún víctimas de trata.
Nevertheless, despite the efforts of many people, mostly teenagers and children are still victims of trafficking.
En virtud de ello, la represión en mi país, en Perú, es muy fuerte. Sanciona estos delitos con una pena no menor de 8 años ni mayor de 15 años efectivas en la cárcel.
In my country, the sentence is very harsh for those people involved in trafficking, and it can range from not less than 8 years and not more than 15 years.
Por eso, en el punto 6,
For this, in point 6,
página 11,
page 11,
el Perú da las propuestas y recomendaciones, como son, por ejemplo, sensibilizar a la sociedad civil en la protección de los derechos humanos de aquellas víctimas de trata.
is raising civil society and protection of human rights of those victims of trafficking in its various forms, especially labor exploitation.
Pues muchos de estos niños son traídos de la ciudad natal, quienes son una especie de padres religiosos, por sus padres religiosos que deberían coadyuvar al desarrollo social del menor, pero sin embargo son sometidos a explotación como trabajos domésticos.
Since many of them are boys and girls brought to his hometown for his godfathers, who are kind or religious parents, should contribute to the social development of children. Yet, but once in the capital, are exploited as domestic or even in textiles mills, which is sometimes socially unstable, to which must be sought and always ensure the best interest of the child and adolescent. Information to victims about their rights and assistance process reserve the right to confidentiality and privacy.
Punto 2. El punto 2.
Second point.
A fin de asegurar prevenir la trata y proteger a la víctima, resulta imprescindible que el Estado peruano, también el gobierno y el Poder Judicial capacite constantemente y sensibilice a los operadores de la justicia contra el delito de la trata de personas.
In order to ensure the prevention of trafficking and to protect victims subject to it, it is essential that the Peruvian state and the President of the Judiciary constantly train and sensitize judicial officers in the crime of human trafficking.
Que el juez, cualquiera fuese su materia,
That the judge, knowing whatever their field,
conociendo con ocasión de un conflicto de intereses la violación de derechos del niño, niña y adolescente,
during a conflict of interest of violation of the rights of children and adolescents,
esté obligado a comunicar a la institución llamada para reprimir a los tratantes de personas.
is subject to this obligation to officially inform the institution required by the law to crack down on traffickers and to protect its victims.
vincular al lograr una vinculación entre las demás instituciones abocadas a la protección de la víctima, como el Ministerio de la Mujer y poblaciones vulnerables.
A link between the other institutions committed to the protection of victims of trafficking, the Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Population, etc.
Brindar un mensaje a través de los jueces, el punto 7. Brindar un mensaje por intermedio de los jueces del Perú, mediante las sentencias, la jurisprudencia, para prevenir ese tipo de delitos.
Also, to achieve the purpose of criminal proceedings is necessary to those, in these most cases, turns out to be the first entity that provides immediate care to children exploited.
En suma, los jueces, como fuerza que lucha contra la trata de personas, debe de velar por la primacía de los derechos humanos. El 8.
In conclusion, judges and forces fighting against trafficking should ensure the primacy of human rights in all social contexts, lest abuses committed against human dignity and children.
Para que no se cometan atropellos contra la dignidad humana de las personas, pero con más preocupación de los niños bajo las credenciales de ejercer una labor respetable relacionada a la educación, protección y ayuda humanitaria.
But with more concern on the children under the credentials to exercise the respectable work related to education, protection, and or humanitarian aid, given that they are the future of the world.
Bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Justice. May I now call upon the Honorable Justice Muhammad Abdullah Smith from Sudan, Court of Appeal.
It is great. Good afternoon, all. It is great honor to me to meet you again. I am Muhammad Abdullah from Sudan Judiciary. Millions of children around the world today are living under shadow of man-made crises, such as war, disasters, children trafficking, illegal immigration, terrorism, which it exposes them to danger, major violations, whereas also environmental pollution is not a new phenomenon or emergency to our planet. But now a new issue appears to be one of the serious issues facing the world, that is terrorism. In such situations like conflicts, wars, disasters, and diseases, and terrorism also, our children need special protection, because these risks embedded their growth capabilities, development, and surely it increases their suffering. Mostly they become disabled, negligence, cruelty, and explosions victims. From all these propositions and that glimmer of hope emerge at the horizon, embedded in Article 51 of Indian Constitution. There is no doubt that the provisions set forth in Article 51 of the Indian Constitution is a guided torch to save the world from an imminent environmental, health, and nuclear disasters and terrorism. Governments and judicial authorities of the world had to accelerate interpretation of these laws to ensure a parliament of justice and proceedings in constitute global parliament has the power to enact binding international law applied to all countries of the world. All governments should provide the desire of peace and security to to the peoples of the world. Today, many events took place around us, conflicts, wars, and disasters, and these crises are various, such as economic, politics, health, social, and influence it on social fabric effectively, which in turn impact on community members, especially children. Today it emerged a nightmare scenarios which endanger our security and international security, namely terrorism, which has swept many countries in the world around us and in the Middle East too. There are countries suffering from it till now. Unfortunately, children are being abused. They are stolen children. United Nations is one of the largest organizations in the worldwide. It works for peace and human rights. However, it lacks of necessary mechanism means to achieve its goals, which it was constituted for. It has provided a considerable effort through its various agencies such as UNICEF, World Health Organization, World Bank, World Food and Agriculture Organization, and International Court of Justice. There is a very important question. Does the United Nations can meet the test of our time? For example, the International Court of Justice, the ICC, has emerged as an independent body from the United Nations organization, as it is clear to everyone. However, its decisions are not binding for some countries, obviously. It deals with selectivity and double standards. It is finally, global issues like terrorism is one of the most complicated issues. It needs first a clear definition for the crime of terrorism in order to draw a clear line between terrorism and struggle movements for independence, for example. Also, the issue of terrorism also needs an honest and honest efforts to tackle it. Thank you. Good.
Thank you, Justice. May I now call upon Judge Justice Amare from Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, participants. I thought that I was in other group in development and sustainability, but I found myself here in group 4 with the title of this conflict resolution, terrorism, and so on. So I managed myself to cope up with the titles. In our history, when we learn history, man throughout his life is full of conflict. The first man who confronted the nature itself is a conflict. When man tries to snatch a property which is at the hand of another is also a conflict. Instead of man conflict with nature, it started man conflict with his own person man. This interest of man had no end. Through time, one group, one tribe tried to conquer another tribe with his own properties. He made man as a slave. He widened his power. And then two form of states emerged to color each other. What for? To be famous, to accumulate wealth and resource. For this, mankind has entered into different wars through his life. In our memory, we know first war, world first war, and the second first war, which was really devastating. And even after that, war is always mongering among themselves. One state is continuously tries to rule another. With this context, the states have engaged themselves for the invention of weapons, personal weapons and mass destructive weapons. These mass destructive weapons are by now in the hands of many states. They are in the hands of many states. If they misuse it, we will destroy. There is no natural person in the world will exist. Therefore, these conflicts, wars, and come now, it changes time to time, the nature of conflict, the nature of war, and now we have terrorism. Terrorism, another systematic way of coercion, one over another. In terrorism, unlike the other conflicts and wars, here are three parties: the perpetrator, the people, and the victim. There are different kinds of terrorism: politically motivated terrorism, religious motivated terrorism, and ideologically motivated terrorism. This politically motivated terrorism is one group starts to overthrow the government. It starts destroying, distracting, killing mercilessly all the people. No discrimination, woman to man, child to man, child to other. The aim of this politically motivated terrorism, you see, there are many different types of terrorists who are funded by states, who are funded by groups, and so on. Terrorism in the government, in the people, will be considered as freedom fighters to the other group, to the other state. The other state who funded these terrorists will consider them as a freedom fighters. what is this tragedy? Among states, when one state wants another state to overthrow, to hand over the power of government, it tries to organize group and send them by infiltrating. Since terrorists have no border, they try to attack the people of that country, and the people of country will stand against their government because he didn't protect us, protect them from this attack, and the government resigns. This is politically motivated terrorism. When we see ideologically motivated terrorism, when group of faith tries to over shoulder to the other group, sometimes even within the same religion, because of very small fractions of differences, they even kill the person who follows the faith of their religion. In the Islam, in the Muslim world, terrorists kill Muslims, not they select Christians or something. Deliberately, they even slaughter Muslims because with minor differences. Hence, the great fear of the time is that the terrorists may get this weapon. There is no doubt they will use it. They will use it. It is time to act. We men, we love our offsprings. We women, we love our offsprings. What can we pass them? This. Okay, thank you. We will clear it in questions.
Thank you for that intervention. Thank you. May I call upon the Justice Dr. Francisco Baffa, Judge of the Supreme Court of the Session of Italy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, dear students, let me start my speech with thanking to the organizer of this wonderful and very important international conference of Chief Justice of the world. And I wish to congratulate for the organizers and the City Montessori School for the perfect and really impressive organization of all the activities. And tell you that I feel really honored to be here in an institution which won the international and prestigious UNESCO Prize for its activity for education and peace. Let me introduce briefly myself and my activities. I've been judge for 23 years, and now I'm working at the Supreme Court of Cassation in Italy. And I'm going to be seconded to the European Court of Human Rights, which has its seat in Strasbourg, which protects the human rights at the European level. If we have time in the debate, we will. I can tell something more about the European Court of Human Rights and how it functions. Well, the given topic concerns crimes that are really serious, like terrorism and genocide. I will say immediately that we condemn any act of these activities, terrorism and genocide, as criminal, unjustifiable, whenever and from whomever committed. We, as citizens of our country and as citizens of the world, have the obligation to respect, to protect, to promote and fulfill the human rights in accordance to principle of universality. And we, as a judge, has the obligation to prevent, to investigate, to punish and to redress violations of human rights in the term established by law. And states have the rights to develop any measure, any policy against these crimes. Everything is necessary for countering the threat that these crimes are facing. But some important juridical problems may arise. I will talk about these problems, telling you something about 2 cases that happens and that was dealt by European courts at Italian level and then at European level. First case, in Italy some years ago were discovered some bookshelves with a lot of files concerning complaints lodged after the Second World War and regarding war crimes committed by the Third Reich, the German state, before and during also the Second World War. In one case, the applicant was a person who was abducted by German military force in Italian territory and deported to the concentration camp of Mauthausen, where he bare untold sufferings. In another case, the applicant was deported to slave labor in Germany. In Italy, like in Greece, we have had thousands of these cases, as no investigation has been taken for years, till the discovery of these files. But from that moment on, the judicial machine started working, and the German state was sued and then condemned by national authorities to pay damages to those persons. Germany complained immediately before the International Court of Justice, claiming that the state has that any state has to respect the principle of state immunity, and that in the case Italy had violated the principle of immunity of another state, that is Germany in the case. The situation was paradoxical, as the subject of the dispute before the International Court of Justice was no longer the Nazi crimes, but the national courts itself, if they were which were trying to give justice and to repair the damage suffered. The International Court of Justice, by a judgment of 2011, established the duty of Italian courts to deny their jurisdiction in the examination of the case, according to the principle of immunity of states. After the judgment, the Italian Parliament passed the law which exclude the jurisdiction of Italian courts on that war crimes. But this law was challenged before the Italian Constitutional Court. And the Italian Constitutional Court declared unlawful this law with regard to our Constitution and made the law void. In 2014, in fact, our Constitutional Court said the principle that the principle of immunity of states is not an absolute principle, but the principle as the immunity of the state, and the principle itself can be limited even when the state exercises sovereign powers, insofar this concerns crimes against humanity and the protection of interests that are fundamental for the mankind. I recall this case because it shows how the protection of fundamental rights, in the case, it was the case of genocide, deprivation of liberty, forced labor, but this protection must be assured also when the international community is not able to do so. It is up to the judge, to the national judge, to try to do it. The second case, this time we deal with terrorism fact and counter-terrorism operation. I already told that following the terrorist attack, the fight against terrorism has become a real priority for everyone, as these attacks are an assault to the fundamental values of human rights. Judges are on the front line, and they are part of this fight against terrorism. But facing terrorist attacks and threats, anybody encounter the temptation, I would say, for the parliaments and for governments, also in international treaty stipulation, that the reaction happen setting aside the safeguards which exist in a democratic state. States instead to be sure that cooperation does not violate their obligation under international human rights, that has to be respected also in the fight against terrorism. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. May I now give it back to Madam, if that's...
We would like to thank all the honorable speakers on the dais for that very meaningful deliberation on the topic tackling global issues. Now, children, it's your turn now, and I'm sure you heard them very carefully. And if you are ready with your questions, we will start off with the question hour. So you can put forth your question. You can also mention to whom your question is addressed to. So if we can start, yes? Okay. Somebody can come in front.
Come in front.
All those who are ready with their questions, we will call you one at a time. You be there only. Be there, we'll call you. Be at your seat. Yes. Come in front.
I would like to address the Honorable Judge from Sudan. Good evening, sir. We want to know why the arrest warrants against al-Bashir, who was involved in genocide, has still not been executed.
Mic up.
Okay. My colleague, Saz Mahmoud, is going to answer this question. He is my one of our delegates.
All right, so you can answer. Yes.
Yes, married to you. Good evening to you all. I was student of this country, and thank you very much. I am impressed. Regarding the ICC, it was like that. We are not part of Rome Statute. You know Rome Statute? We are not a part. Therefore, it's not binding for the people non-party to it. In case it's binding for the party, binding to it, the part to it, that means it could be double standard for any nations. And although India is not part of the ICC, therefore our president will be coming here in 27 on the top of all eye of the world. I hope I answer your question.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Any more questions, please? Come forward and ask, and also address the person to whom you want to.
My question is to the Chief Justice from Tuvalu. Sir, I wanted to ask you that is an event like the Boston Marathon bombing in which only 3 persons were dead the kind of question we should be more worried about these days, or we should stress more upon the big events like the 26/11 bomb blast or the Mumbai or the US attacks?
I'm not too clear on that question. Can you repeat it, or someone to explain it further, please?
Show me what your question is. You're
Yes.
on the question. The question is, I'm repeating the question, sir, for you. Is an event like the Boston Marathon the kind of question we should be more worried about these days? Given the sprawling nature of the course and that, unlike big stadium events, there aren't limited secured access point plotters would have to defeat to get weapons in position to harm people. Your question is too long, don't you think, Beta?
Summary that
You just talk to sir first. Shorten your question because the question is not very clear. Children, please see the question which you frame has got to be a precise question which is clear in itself. If the question is not clear, you cannot get good answers to it. So please have short, precise questions which can be dealt with properly. Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir, ma'am. My question is addressed to the Honorable His Excellency from Tuvalu, Governor General. So do you think, seeing the recent events, religion today has become a threat?
Come in front and ask him.
Sir, do you think that religion today has become a threat?
Religion is part of life for individual, and I understand that the respective constitutions respect the freedom of religion or belief. So, but there are those terrorist groups who use religion as a means to do their act, their unlawful act. And we can see that. They are camouflaging, or they pretend to be a religious body, but they are doing their acts as so terrible. They are not conducive to the life of humanity. Am I answering your question?
What he is trying to say is, under the cover of religion, people are doing all sorts of act, which is very inhuman. Yes, sir?
Yes.
This is what
Yes.
you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, next child.
Honorable ma'am and sir, this is a question for all of you. Sir,
Please be seated, children. At a time, so many people should not stand. Please be seated. We'll call you.
so what concrete steps can be taken to foster eradication of human trafficking?
Global trafficking. To eradicate global trafficking, what steps can we take? Global trafficking. Anybody would like to answer the question?
Excuse me. Trafficking in countries is very common, and most vulnerable people are the children in this, because they are so vulnerable because of their needs. So they are easily enticed by these terrorist groups or people who want to sell these kids to be soldiers or even for laborers. Yeah, but to control this, I think it's in the respective border control by respective jurisdictions. It is that they can do. And these are the kind of things that we urge the international community to come in solidarity to establish the mechanisms that to control these kind of acts, which are not in accordance with human life. Thank you.
Sir,
Is your question answered? It is.
Sir, it is observed that even when people know about human trafficking and things related to it, then also they are of many even educated people are sometimes caught in it. Sir, no sir, specifically sir, when they even know that this can be a dangerous task, they can get involved with human trafficking. Then also they try to
I have
go
understood.
along
You
with it.
mean to say that the judiciary should come forth to have certain rules established wherein this can be dealt with. You mean to say this? Yes. They want the judiciary to interfere in this so that there are certain standards by means of which these people can be punished. And there should be one norm for the entire world.
Yeah, I'll try and answer if my friends here can also contribute to that. But as we understand, there is no legislature in place of the world. There is no parliament to make laws. We know that there is the ICC, there is also ICJ, which are the courts established by the United Nations. But as we can see now, they are not enough. Judges can intervene by way of their judgment, but they cannot make laws. That is the prerogative of the legislature, the parliament, to make laws. The judiciary is to interpret the laws. And I'm not saying that they cannot do anything, but through their interpretation, correct me if I'm wrong, judges, I'm not a judge, but through their interpretations of provisions of a constitution or a law, they can influence
changes. That's what I feel.
Yeah.
So through the decisions like state decisis decisions, I think those are the kind of things that the court can influence.
That's true.
Thank you.
you so much, sir. Can we
Thank you,
clap?
sir.
Okay. Next. Children, I think we can give the mic to you. You don't need to stand. You be seated, please. Sit down in front only. We can give you the mic. Yes.
Honorable judges, my question is open to you all. As you know that we consider water as a gift of nature of God, but some countries are blessed with in abundance and some are not. So sir, I want to ask that how globally we can tackle with this issue about water. How can the court interfere in this? How can the countries be concerned in a such way that people receive water equally?
You want to answer? I didn't understand. Oh, no, okay. The water is a commodity that is for humanity requirement. You mean water?
Saying that water is necessary for life, so how can we ensure that everybody throughout the world gets equal amount of water?
Thank you, student. As rightly as you mentioned, water is a necessity for life. Water is a necessity for trees. Water is a necessity for animals. All living things, they need water. Paramount to that is the need of a human being, water. So how can we tackle this commodity so that we can share it out equally to those in need? And these are the questions that our leaders must answer properly in our respective countries through projects that they can have desalination. Into we have a problem with drought, and we have been assisted by India, Australia, those countries, because it's all affected by climate change, and we don't have enough water. So desalination plants have been established in our country. For those countries who have rivers, I think, and rivers, they run through boundaries. And probably some countries, they try to protect the other country at the end of the river, not to the flow of the water. And those are the kind of things that it must be addressed properly by an international tribunal or something like that. Yes. Am I answering your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I think this metaphorical.
Can we have those two
Thank you.
girls from the back? There were two girls coming up. Can we give them a chance?
May I add something? May I add something on this
Yes,
topic?
please do.
Just to say that in our country, we have the traditional distinction between goods that belongs to private and goods that belong to the public sector. But the owner do of its goods whatever he wants. Now jurists are studying a third category of goods, the common goods, and water is an example of this case, in this case, and for which the rules of the use of the kind of good may be different, because the powers of the owners are limited by the nature of the goods that must be used for anybody. Just to tell this point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Next child, yes. We will take two more questions after this.
Good evening, respected judges. Myself, Gauri Mishra, representing CMS Rajajipuram Campus 1. My question is, today youth is being attracted towards terrorism. According to you, why is this problem increasing and how can we tackle it? Yes.
Well, terrorism is an international fact. So the counter-terrorism need a cooperation among the states. We need the rules at the national stage, but also treaties to combat terrorism. We have many of them. We have many conventions, many international treaties against terrorism. But one thing we have to remind that in the counter-terrorism, we have always to respect human rights. We can't make like terrorists that they don't respect human rights. We have to respect human rights. These are important consequences. For instance, torture may not be allowed, never. And also when it could be useful to discover some fact about terrorists. And this has been set up clearly by the European Court of Human Rights in many cases against the European states that cooperate with the USA to counter-terrorism operations that were declared unlawful by the European Court of Human Rights. So we have to face these crimes, bad crimes, serious crimes, but we have some limits that we have respect, because some principle and the protection of human rights principle, many of them are not derogable by national laws and even by the international community.
So, as you have mentioned that fight against terrorism has become priority now.
Yeah.
So, how far you think that education is successful in eradicating terrorism and crimes against humanity?
Education is really important because the base of the terrorism are two, essentially. The misguiding of young person and the use of poor persons. So we have to act on these 2 points: education of people, to be educated to respect human rights values, and from the other side, to a new redistribution of wealth that can overcome the situation of the poorest.
Thank you, sir.
May I add to that, Madam?
Yes.
I think education is very, very important in tackling all the problems in life. To educate and to advocate. Unless we have good citizens in this planet, we can make a change.
Definitely.
And so education is key to developments. Developments that are responsible to develop the human dignity, a human life. And kids are so precious. That's why we educate our kids. That's why we want people. And that's why we have the convention on the right of the child to have a free education, so that every children is educated to be a good citizen of this planet and not to do things that are destructive to the life of another person. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Quisiera hablar algo, por favor, al respecto. Bien, considero que la educación es muy importante para combatir el terrorismo. Si bien en la actualidad en muchos países se considera que el terrorismo está erradicado, eso no es correcto. No podemos creer ilusoriamente que el terrorismo fue descartado. Debemos seguir luchando contra el terrorismo y ello va a depender en muchos casos desde la escuela, desde lo que se enseñe en los colegios, para que podamos respetar el derecho de todas las personas y evitar el terrorismo, lo que permitirá que podamos vivir respetando los derechos humanos.
Although terrorism is thought to be eradicated in most of the countries, she says that at schools now some future terrorists are being formed because teachers are the ones who put in the children's mind that they must be terrorists. That's why she thinks that school is a very important goal now for governments to eradicate terrorism from its roots.
So it goes without saying that education is the key to to progress of any society, and whatever the kind of education is imparted to the students, the onus lies on the schools, on the teachers, to educate the children in the right way so that we are able to eliminate terrorism from our society and from this planet. I think one more you have to ask. Okay.
Good evening, judges. Myself from Sona Rawat and from Rajajipuram Campus 1. Sir, my question is to the Chief Justice of Ethiopia. Sir, you mentioned about religious terrorism. So I want to ask, why has it hyped so much, and how can we put an end to it?
Thank you. When I say terrorism in many forms and kinds, politically motivated terrorism and religious motivated terrorism. There are groups or sects nowadays in different parts of the world who are trying to shoulder their faith on others. On those who doesn't follow, they kill them. They kill them. Even these politically motivated and ideologically motivated terrorisms are nowadays they are decreasing. It is the religious terrorism that is alarming to the whole world. When we go to the Middle East, it was some parts of Africa. Still, there is Boko Haram in Nigeria, there is ISIS in Iraq, Syria. All are these followed motivated religion-based terrorism. So, as previously mentioned, to tackle this, one, education is basic so that young offenders will not be joined to this group. The other, education, non-formal education, even to the public at large. The public at large should be informed so that he would be aware the advantage and the disadvantage of being that group. Lack of good governance is also one root cause of this group. When people are angry on their government, they escape and join this group. Then good governance also deters the flow of this terror group who join and act. So when we say to tackle terrorism, we should think of in many directions the root causes of the formation, the foundation of that terrorism. If we get the root cause, it's simple to get the solution.
Thank you. I think.
Excuse me. May I add to
yes,
to that? Yeah, it's a very interesting question on religion. Students, I must say that no religious leader known to us to advocate terrorism. No. They will talk about love. And these people who are terrorist groups, these are ideologies. Terrorism is an ideology. And as the justice down here said, misuse of religion for political gain. That's the problem. They camouflage themselves as a religious belief for hatred. And this is the problem all over the world. So I leave you with a message that unless we have love in our heart, and I think that will solve problems in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to add
Well,
something.
very well answered. And I think the day everybody starts and gets
Sorry,
to
madam.
know.
Sorry, I would like to add something.
Yes, sir.
I would like to say terrorism has no religion, has no nationality. You can, all religions, Islam, Christianity, Jewish, all religions are denies terrorism. Terrorism is in the terrorists themselves, not in the religion. The terrorists are those who are they are deviators from the righteous. They lost the righteous way because all religions denies terrorists and asking for tolerance and love. Therefore, you cannot say Muslim are terrorists or Christian are terrorists or and so on. Thank you.
Yes, as it was pointed out that all the religious leaders, they teach love. And the day we know this, that we have to respect all the religions and act as one, things will be sorted out. So we have to understand this, that mankind is one and God is one and all religions are one. And I'm sure CMS children who have been doing the World Religion Prayer, the All Religion Prayer for so many years, you can answer this question best. Nobody else can answer this question. Respect for all religions is the key to eradicate religious terrorism. Yes? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Honorable judges, this question
We have the last question coming up now. Yes.
Honorable judges, this question is to all of you that arms is a competition among the nations. One of the most important human rights is being violated, that is right to life. Some countries are spending most of the money in military programs. So I want to ask that, is it possible for the judiciary to control this?
Anybody answering this question?
Sir, arms is a competition among the nations, and one of the most important human rights is being violated, that is right to life. Some of the countries are spending most of the money in military programs. So I want to ask that, is it possible for the judiciary to control this?
Anybody? Actually, the formation of laws is not done by the judiciary. As he said earlier also, the promulgation of the laws, that is a political issue. They can intervene at the time of giving judgment. Elimination of nuclear weapons, that has to be the responsibility of the heads of the states of various countries. And that is why all the time this proposal is made that there has to be a meeting of all the heads of the states of all the countries of the world so as to eliminate the nuclear weapons. Have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right. So thank you very much, all the dignitaries, all the speakers, for that very valuable input into this very complicated topic, tackling global issues. And children, for your attention, for your patience. Actually, again I would say, the onus lies on you. You are going to be the future citizens of this world. So the mindset of the people has to change, and that can be changed only and only through education. The day you start realizing that these problems should not be there in the world and you start spreading awareness amongst people, I am sure you can make a change. Otherwise, no matter how many deliberations we have, how many times we have these type of seminars, things will not work unless and until the mindset of people is changed through education, through proper guidance, through the role of schools, and of course through the intervention of the judiciary. Thank you very much, sir, for being present here today. And this is the principal, Mrs. Jyoti Kashyap, Principal, CMS Aliganj Campus 1, signing out now. Thank you and Jai Jagat.